Come, welcome, weary traveler. Sit, enjoy, imbibe yourself, warm yourself by my fire, have a small treat, a little snack. Let us engage. Does goodness actually exist? Do good people still exist? Maybe it's not my job to figure that out. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I use this channel to talk to myself, to you, with you, about whatever it may be this time. And today, like I said in that hilarious intro, I want to talk about goodness, or this was a question I've been thinking about a lot recently. Does goodness actually exist? Did it ever exist, and does it still? If it did. So I was reading up about this notion and this concept of good, and a lot of times it's in... Oh, wait, first of all, hi. Thank you so much for being here. As you can see, cut my hair, very nice. Dyed it, it was blue, now this is what's called like a soft lavender. So I love it. As you can see, it's a little thin up in the front, and for a long time, about a decade, I was so incredibly anxious about my hair. I still am a little bit, and definitely see a lot of that stuff, but as soon as I decided to shave it, it was like a weight had been lifted from my body, literally and metaphorically. But I'm so glad that I did it. And I think it ties in a little bit to what I want to talk about here. This notion of perspective, of goodness. Right, okay, going back. I kind of grew up Christian. I had cousins and family members who were very religious, and so I would always try to go to church with them, or like went to church with them a few times, and would go to these like very evangelical, let's call them, not in the subsect of Christianity, like it wasn't an evangelical Christian summer camp, but it was certainly a summer camp designed to evangelize youth, because it was so much fun. It was summer camp, and then every night you'd worship the Lord. And so I'd come back from these summer camps, I went like 5 years in a row, and I'd come back from these summer camps, and I would always be so like, oh, I'm so devout, I'm such a huge Christian and all these things, and like I'd go to church a lot, and then I would initially fall off. So I've kind of been in and out of Christianity for a long time, and where I'm at with it now is like, look, believe what you want to believe, but if your beliefs start to impede on other people pursuing happiness consensually and through joy, that's where I draw the line. Anyway, and that's not the point of this video. A metaphor that's often talked about a lot inside of Christianity, or really inside of religion, and a topic is how to deal with suffering and how to deal with grief. And so a metaphor I remember is this idea of a river sort of eroding a riverbank over time, and it just becomes a little stream, can eventually become a river, and then it becomes deeper, and then boom, the Grand Canyon of just over erosion over a long time. And the metaphor that they used is the sorrow in life creates this sort of pocket that then can be filled up. So the more you suffer, the more capacity you have for love. Always in this pursuit of describing goodness in a binary connection to evil. Good and evil. You can't have good without evil, because if you didn't, or you can have good without evil, but you can't have evil without good. To know one is to know the other. Anyway, and so there is this binary thinking about good and evil, and that they're always connected. And I kind of disagree with that. Again, as I'm exploring my own journey through breaking out of the gender binary, I'm starting to become abundantly aware of all of these other binaries that exist, right? This sort of polarized thinking in a lot of things. And that feeds into this question of, does goodness exist? Because good for me, because I'm just existing, may in fact be evil for someone else because I'm existing outside of a gender binary. Because I like to wear dresses and skirts. That makes me evil in some people's eyes, not mine. And so this idea of good and evil, or good only really being so much more perception-based and perspective-based, then asks that question, does goodness exist? Did it ever exist? And very quickly, when we start to, very quickly, in just like a quick Google search of does good exist, does goodness exist, you'll find Christian dogma or economic theory. And I don't know, it makes me sad that that's kind of these two places that has all of the good, sort of. They are monopolizing the topic of goodness because of them only being this idea of being good in order to then ascend to heaven or whatever, or this idea of good being better and better being progress, and so progress being growth. And the sort of duality of bad people can make good things, and good things can cause a lot of bad outcomes. I'm not even going to pretend to go into like concrete examples, but we get the gist. It's the yin and the yang. With inside of every good, there's something that's maybe not so good. Inside of everything that's not good, there can be an aspect of goodness. Case in point, there's this great film. I will put the title here because the title is escaping me right now. But I was watching it I watched it for a religion class in college, and it's the story of two men who survived the Holocaust, and one of them completely lost their faith, and the other was completely emboldened by that and became a much more faithful person. And here they are, two people who experienced virtually a similar thing. Whether or not they were in the same camp, that's for the film to watch. But they experienced virtually the same thing, and yet had two wildly different outcomes. And both of them believed that their outcome was good. To then see the evilness of the world and then reject the world because of that is a good. Or to see the wickedness of the world and then to be good in spite of that is good. And so this concept of goodness is always so derivative of our perception and perspective, And I think when we talk a lot about goodness, it's always inside of these structures or these systems: religion, economics, capitalism, communism, socialism, all these things about good, the greater good, the goodness for many over the goodness of few. And a big theory or a big talking point that then aligns with a lot of that is this idea of lawlessness. If we all just gave in to our vices and gave in to every whim, it would be chaos and it would be absolute evilness. And I think a part of that is true because I think inside of all of us there is a capacity to do very terrible things. And I think those terrible things are truly based in ego and this sort of ego protection and this manifestation of ego outward, because ego doesn't have empathy because it only cares about the self and from a place of protection. And so to not have empathy, we would then lose all capacity for good. And the banality of evil. Common phrase or famous phrase. Again, I will put their name, Adolf something. I don't want to mispronounce the last name, but someone who was on trial for the crimes that they committed inside of the Holocaust during World War II. And real reports realizing that this wasn't some monster of a person, some deep-seated evil that always existed inside of them. They were just someone who wanted to be a part of something and then therefore followed orders so well. And how many of us can be in that same situation? And how many of us would be in similar situations because of the ego or because of this desire to belong? And what terrible things would you do for the promise of belonging? It's just like the Crusades, going back even further. What terrible things would you do in the name of God? And are those good things? Who says? Who's to say? Which God, right? I love fire. This is one of my favorite times of the year. I love when it's cold for this reason, right? To watch fire. Because we can ask this question of like, is evil and good internal or external? Are there external things that is good and evil, this external wave that we jump onto and ride that? Or is it something that exists inside of us and we unlock the good and the evil? I don't know. And maybe that's why this is such a good... Maybe this is why it's such a good... Maybe the complexity of this question is exciting because it will keep itself in the zeitgeist. Easy questions that have easy answers get forgotten very quickly. That's why we forget basic school problems and basic math, because it's so simple, and our brains, while they are massive supercomputers, can only hold so much information before our brains automatically are like, it's easy. And so the complexity of this question then continues to keep it alive, which I think is good. Because I think progress in whatever way, socially, scientific, economic, spiritual, artistic, this progress broadens our lens of humanity and broadens the capacity of what we can see and visualize. And so goodness will always be relative because it will always be dependent and based on the information that we have. To keep it silly, if you only eat hard-boiled eggs, they're good. And then you can have, eggs Florentine, and it's this wonderfully more complex dish that therefore it's so much more exciting. And therefore it's good. But is it good because of its complexity? Whereas a hard-boiled egg, you can make it very simply, and it's always going to be tasty. You can do anything you want to it to make it tastier. So good is relative based on the information that we have. And I think goodness, yes, goodness does exist. Yes, I believe that. I really do. I was watching Wicked recently, and last week. Time. And so, it's a great film. I recommend anyone to see it, and I think it really does bring up this question of goodness. Because, like Glinda, if you are more preoccupied with the perception of good and everyone around you thinking you are good, does that make you good? Or, like Elphaba, will you stand up to injustices around you for the good of all creatures if that makes you evil in the eyes of the public? And this is my hot take. I don't think either one is right or wrong. Obviously, it feels I presented it with some bias because of the notion of justice and the notion of doing right by others. But it is this, again, it's this intrinsic versus extrinsic. Is the goodness something that is intrinsically inside of you, or is goodness something that you extrinsically present so that you can feel good? I don't think one is inherently better than the other, because I think all of us at one point, or the capacity for my empathy is, I know there have definitely been times in my life where I have presented goodness or presented something in hopes that people would believe that about me. And there are times that I've been staunch about my belief, regardless of what people around me believe. And I know that to be good. Now that thing is happening where I'm saying the word good so much that it's starting to lose its meaning. And I mean, let's lean into that too. Like that feeling of repeating something over and over and over again loses its punch. And maybe there is this goodness fatigue. We're all trying so hard to be good that we try that then we lose sight of when we are good. Or lose sight of the goodness that exists all around us. And it's certainly hard. And it's definitely easy to look at despair and evil, because it is intoxicating, because it is so much more a marker of survival. We are hardwired to look at bad things so that we can avoid them, so that we can stay alive and stay safe. Whereas looking for good things, I don't know, but they're out there. I have to believe that I want to believe that they're out. I want to believe. And I'm going to level with you. Because again, in all of this, in everything that I do, with this camera in front of me, for you, for me, I want to be honest. And I want to tell the truth. Love everybody and tell the truth. This is my second time filming this. I tried to film it the other day, and then, of course, I sat in a way that made the camera unfocused, and I shall not present an unfocused video again. It's not I'm trying to grow in this aspect. And so now I'm getting bombarded with all of these feelings and these judgments on myself that this isn't as good as what I did. Or I'm not as eloquent in this version as I was in that last one. Or I'm missing ideas from the last video and not saying them here. And maybe I am. And maybe that's just part of the goodness of it all, is that here I am. And maybe it was better. And maybe. There's so many maybes. But I think this is good enough. Too long, didn't watch. Goodness does exist. Yes, we all have the capacity for evil, but I think that is born out of the ego and not out of this predetermined or predilection to evilness. And I think that at our core, we are inherently good, and to look at examples of pure wickedness in humanity is to miss the forest for the trees. And I think there's just a lot of good and evil people, and even here I am getting locked into that binary, good or evil, good and evil, this spectrum. It's either good, evil, two ends, and then we're all somewhere in the middle. When in reality, it's maybe a lot more complicated than that. And I think that's good, because it means that we can keep talking about it later. I think that's all I have before I start devolving into absolute nonsense. So, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. You are good. We're good. Hey, we're good. good ride. Good. I'm going to sit here and watch this fire. And I hope you join me just for a little bit. I'll see you in the next video. Okay. Bye.